Okay, so let's dive right in. We're looking at those sources you shared, the ones about Siddhartha Gautama, right after the Great Renunciation.
Exactly, picking up literally moments after he leaves the palace.
And this deep dive, it's really zeroing in on, well, the first things he actually did once he was out. Cutting his hair, changing his clothes.
Yeah, the excerpts from cutting hair, donning robes, really frame these not just as, practical necessities, but as hugely symbolic acts. Our mission here is to unpack that symbolism, figure out what those actions really meant.
Right, because your source presents them as these big visual statements, like shedding the prince look, embracing something totally different, simplicity, detachment.
We're using the text to get a sense of just how deep that commitment was, why these simple things still resonate.
They weren't small things at all, were they? Your source kind of argues they're the real starting point.
That's the take, yeah. The true beginning of the spiritual quest out in the real world.
Okay, so let's start where your source does. The severing of ties, the hair. What was the deal with the prince's hair before this?
Well, the text makes it pretty clear. It wasn't just, long hair. It was styled, elaborate, a real symbol of his status, his royal class. Think about it perfectly freely. Kept hair signifies someone who doesn't do manual labor, someone set apart.
So cutting it.
Yeah.
That wasn't just about, easier maintenance for a wanderer.
No, not primarily. I mean, sure, long hair might be cumbersome, but your source really stresses the symbolism over the practical side. It was a very deliberate cut.
A severing, like the title says.
Exactly. Cutting ties with that whole past identity.
Yeah.
It was visible, public in a way, even if only to himself at first. A declaration.
And a letting go, right. Your source talks about letting go of vanity, the societal markers, all the palace expectations, turning inwards.
Yeah, and the language in your source is quite evocative there. It mentions something like the weight of each strand falling away. Yeah, like a physical manifestation of releasing the attachments of his former life. It paints a picture of literally shedding that old self.
You really get a sense of finality.
Yeah.
A clean break.
That's exactly how your source frames it. A point of no return.
Yeah.
He wasn't Prince Siddhartha anymore in that moment. And, the text connects this to a bigger idea. People across different cultures choosing simplicity, shedding status symbols for spiritual aims.
It feels very universal when you put it like that. Which brings us to the next act. The robes. Embracing simplicity. What's the source say about swapping the royal clothes for simple robes?
Again, it emphasizes the contrast. He goes from, luxurious silks, probably jewels, the finest materials, to just humble cloth, simple. The source suggests probably dyed in, earthy tones, nothing flashy.
The symbolism there seems pretty clear, too.
Oh, absolutely. Your source reads it as a direct rejection of material wealth, a commitment to austerity, choosing a life without luxury.
And does it also touch on that idea of equality? Because taking off the royal gear makes him look like anyone else, right?
It does highlight that. Suddenly he's not visually distinct. He's not the prince. He looks like other seekers, maybe even like the poor. Your source suggests he's deliberately putting himself on the same level as everyone else searching for answers.
Blending in a way.
Yeah, shedding the distinctions. And the text draws parallels, mentioning things like the ochre robes you see sadhus wearing in India.
Oh, right.
Those robes carry a similar visual weight, signifying renunciation, detachment. Your source points out that just wearing that simple robe day in and day out acts as a constant reminder, a visual cue of his choice.
Less to cling to, maybe.
That's part of it. When you possess very little, attachment becomes, less of an issue.
So haircut, fancy clothes gone, simple robe on, he's transformed. Your source says this is the real launch point, the first pilgrimage.
Yes, exactly. Stepping out of the palace grounds, not as a prince on an outing, but as a seeker, venturing into the completely unknown. That's framed as the actual start of the spiritual journey.
Leaving everything behind. Comfort, security.
Yeah.
Everything he ever knew.
Everything. And stepping into a world he'd been sheltered from, full of uncertainty, challenges, but also potential discoveries.
Does the text give any sense of what he might have been feeling? It must have been overwhelming.
It implies a mix, perhaps liberation from the old life, but also the daunting reality of the unknown path ahead. Maybe even a touch of sadness for what was left. But overwhelmingly, your source stresses the sheer power of his resolve, his determination.
And his goal was crystal clear from the start.
Absolutely. According to your reading, his focus was singular. Find the end of suffering. Every step away from that palace life was a step deeper into that quest towards, potential enlightenment.
Okay, so he sets off. What does your source say about his first steps into this new ascetic life? What did he actually do?
Well, it describes a period of active searching. He didn't just wander aimlessly. He sought out known spiritual teachers of the time.
So he went looking for guidance.
Yes, engaging with different philosophies, different practices that were prevalent in that region. He was actively exploring the spiritual landscape.
And your source suggests he encountered quite a range of ideas and techniques.
It does. It mentions he would have learned various meditation methods, debated different philosophical viewpoints, and importantly, he experimented with extreme asceticism.
The really harsh practices, like fasting and self-mortification.
Exactly. The belief back then among some groups was that extreme physical hardship, serious deprivation, could somehow purify the self and lead to insight. He tried those paths.
Even though he later rejected them.
Crucially, yes. Your source points out that even those experiences he eventually moved away from were vital. They were part of his learning process.
How so?
By trying them, by experiencing their limitations firsthand, he understood why they didn't lead to the ultimate goal he sought. It was learning through doing, through critical evaluation.
So it wasn't just blind acceptance of whatever teacher he found. He was testing things out.
Precisely. Your source compares it to how any serious scholar or seeker engages critically with different schools of thought before forming their own conclusions. And it was this whole period, this intense exploration and testing, that eventually steered him towards his own unique path, the middle way.
Which really brings us back to those first actions, doesn't it? The hair, the robes. Your source keeps returning to their power as symbols.
It really does. It presents that image of the prince cutting his hair, putting on simple robes as the enduring symbol of renunciation, the definitive start of a dedicated spiritual life.
A complete break.
A complete break with the past, yeah. And an unwavering commitment to this new, profound purpose he'd set for himself.
And the core lesson from these acts, as your source presents it.
I think it boils down to the necessity of letting go, releasing attachments.
Not just things like wealth.
Right, not just material stuff, but also, as your source emphasizes, those ingrained identities, the roles we play, the expectations tied to those roles. To find deeper truths, the text suggests you often have to shed those layers.
It's a powerful message. That real transformation often requires something quite radical. A visible shift, maybe, but definitely an internal one.
Yeah. And your source wraps it up nicely by saying that from these seemingly simple acts, these initial decisive steps, the whole journey towards becoming the Buddha truly unfolded.
Cutting hair, donning robes, simple gestures maybe, but as your source makes so clear, they were packed with meaning. The profound start of an incredible journey. Thanks for walking us through that text.
Absolutely. It was a really focused look at a pivotal moment.
So, as we think about Siddhartha's radical choice, that need for renunciation to pursue growth, here's something for you, our listener, to reflect on. If embracing necessary change in your own life required letting go of something significant, what might that be? What identity, what comfort, what expectation would you need the courage to shed to move towards your growth?